robot hordes coming in fast.
Well, evidently, all it takes to slap the NERF brand on a video game is a couple plastic guns and some foam darts. Because as far as I can tell, those are the only things NERF related in this game. But like the very toy ammunition upon which it's based, this game is soft and foamy enough to keep your kids safe. This is NERF N-Strike Elite. Released exclusively for the Nintendo Wii in 2009, NERF N-Strike Elite is a sequel to 2008's original NERF N-Strike. The difference is, for the second game, Electronic Arts went a slightly more ambitious route. Where the original N-Strike was essentially a collection of shooting minigames, N-Strike Elite is an on-rail shooter, and a surprisingly decent one at that. You play as a group of kids armed with a virtual armory of NERF weaponry, which was actually a pretty common sight in my backyard when I was growing up. I mean, there was nothing cooler than getting all your friends together and staging a NERF war back in the woods. But as I mentioned, those toy guns themselves are unfortunately the only part of that NERF spirit that this game manages to capture. I'm not saying I want the game to be based on kids playing in the woods, but I mean, these kids are engaged in some kind of battle against an army of robots. It's like the Terminator meets some generic action cartoon, and that's the thing that keeps this game from the must-have category. Rather than play up the nerfness, so to speak, N-Strike Elite is a standard on-rail shooter with only slightly cosmetic nerfness. So, as it is, this is a game for younger players only, but that's not to say it's a bad one. In fact, for the right audience, this is a solid on-rail shooter. A nice game to get out when the kids are around, and Dead Space Extraction might not be appropriate. You can play the game with a single Wii remote, but the game's uniqueness comes from its peripheral. N-Strike Elite comes packaged with a real-life NERF gun that houses the Wii remote and doubles as the game's controller. And aside from the fact that it's a freaking NERF gun, the coolest thing about that is the little red lens that's attached to it. See, N-Strike Elite is filled with moments that require the use of this lens, the red reveal as it's called. You actually have to look at the game through that lens in order to see various targets and enemy weak points. It's a really clever way to break the fourth wall. And if it's cool in the eyes of a 27-year-old, I mean, I can only imagine how mind-blowing it must be to a 10-year-old. Not to mention the fact that it's a freaking NERF gun.
Whoa, missiles! Again? What's that missiles?
So N-Strike Elite is a perfectly functional shooter, but it does have a few issues. In addition to being less playfully designed than you might expect from a game based on NERF, the enemies are also very repetitive. And there isn't much feedback when you're shooting them either. It's kind of hard to tell if you're hitting them or not, since your ammunition doesn't have any physical feedback. But on the positive side, N-Strike Elite is packed with secret areas and things to unlock, including lots of options for gun customization. And that's the one nerfy thing the game definitely gets right. I love the concept of adding parts to your NERF gun. I mean, those backyard wars, it would have had a completely different dynamic if I would have had laser sights. This definitely is not a game for older gamers, so if you're drawn to the idea of controlling a game with a NERF gun, well, know that you'll spend a lot more time with the gun than the game. But for younger players looking for a fun and appropriate shooter, NERF N-Strike Elite delivers, even though it doesn't have the NERF bow and arrow. You remember that? I think it was ridiculous.